Back in the 70s, Christopher Reeve became forever known on the big screen as Superman, setting the standard for how the hero should be portrayed. The movie proved that making a man fly was possible long before CGI even existed.
I've got you.
Who's got you?
And even though it was the first big box office hit for a superhero movie, the production had its fair share of problems. From one actor refusing to shave his head to play a bald character, to another who didn't bother memorizing his lines and just read them during filming.
I don't wanna work.
So in today's video, I've gathered the most interesting facts from the classic Superman movie. Back then, superhero movies weren't nearly as popular as they are today. Most of what existed were low-budget TV productions, like the old Incredible Hulk series. So to give the project more credibility, the producers hired Mario Puzo, the Oscar-winning writer of The Godfather.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Now, even though Mario Puzo would have been perfect for writing a mafia story set in Gotham, he was actually hired to write the script for Superman 1 and 2, which were planned to be filmed at the same time. Although this wasn't his usual genre, he ended up writing an impressive 500-page script, which turned out to be way too long, even for 2 movies. That's when screenwriters David Newman and Robert Benton were brought in to revise the script and create a more streamlined version. But their rewrite ended up making the story much more childish and over the top, something that would later be fixed when director Richard Donner came on board. At first, one of the names on the list to direct the movie was a young and unknown Steven Spielberg. However, the producers thought his salary was too high for their budgets, so they decided to wait and see if his next movie would be a hit, a movie called Jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
The massive success of Jaws made Spielberg even more expensive, and negotiations with him never went any further. So the job went to Guy Hamilton, a director best known for several classic James Bond films.
Bond. James Bond.
With Hamilton on board, filming was scheduled to start in Italy. But because of legal issues surrounding Marlon Brando, following the controversy of Last Tango in Paris, the production had to be moved to England. This time, it was Guy Hamilton who couldn't stay because he was a tax exile. And thanks to the recent success of the horror movie The Omen, Richard Donner was brought in to take over as director. Right away, Donner demanded that the script be rewritten. He felt the tone was all wrong, too silly, filled with pointless action, and disrespectful to the source material. One scene he pointed out had Superman going around the city looking for bald men, trying to find Lex Luthor, until he runs into Kojak, the TV detective, who gives him a lollipop and says,
"Who loves you, baby?"
Yeah, safe to say he made the right call. To set the tone for the whole crew, Donner put up a big sign in every creative department with the word verisimilitude, meaning the movie didn't have to be realistic, but it had to feel real. With the help of his friend Tom Mankiewicz, the two reworked the story into the version we all know today.
Good job.
To add more credibility to the movie, the producers hired Marlon Brando to play Jor-El, Superman's biological father. He was paid a whopping $3.7 million, plus a percentage of the box office, which ended up making him the highest paid actor in the world at the time, earning around $14 million for just 10 minutes of screen time. But despite the massive paycheck, Brando was a real headache for the production. He was already known for being difficult on set and mostly concerned about the money.
Show me the money.
The first issue came when he refused to shoot his scenes on schedule, knowing he'd get an extra $1 million per extra day of work, so he dragged things out on purpose, and the crew had to assign a staff member just to get him out of his trailer. On top of that, he refused to memorize his lines. He claimed it was the only way to keep his performance fresh and not overly rehearsed. So in many scenes, cue cards were placed just off camera so he could read his lines while filming.
I don't want a job. It's so much work.
Gene Hackman was also brought in to boost the film's publicity. He was hesitant at first, worried that playing a comic book villain might hurt his reputation as a serious actor, but he eventually accepted the role for $2 million.
I like money.
However, he refused to shave his head or wear a bald cap to match Lex Luthor's iconic look from the comics. To work around this, the filmmakers styled his hair differently in each scene, giving the impression that Lex was constantly changing wigs. He only appears bald in the very end when Lex is arrested. When it came time to cast Superman, the producers initially considered names like James Caan and even Clint Eastwood, but surprisingly, the one who came closest to landing the role was Sylvester Stallone. However, director Richard Donner believed it wouldn't be convincing for the audience to see a very famous actor as Superman, so he fought to have the hero portrayed by an unknown actor surrounded by a star-studded cast instead. In a pool of about 200 candidates, Christopher Reeve stood out due to a play he was in, even though he was very skinny at the time, as we can see from this test he did before starting his workouts. Initially, Christopher Reeve was offered a muscle suit to make him look stronger, but we've already seen in DC movies that it doesn't look good on screen. However, the actor committed to developing real muscles. With the help of bodybuilder David Prowse, who was famously the man behind Darth Vader's mask in Star Wars, Christopher Reeve underwent intense training, gaining over 30 pounds of muscle in just 2 months, and according to him, without using steroids. He got in great shape to play Superman, but that's nothing compared to the crazy transformations actors go through nowadays, and that's something I plan to talk about in the next Superman videos. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, and if you're enjoying these facts, go ahead and drop a like to support the channel. Getting Christopher Reeve in shape to play Superman might have been the easy part. The real challenge was making him fly for real, without any CGI. The visual effects team tried all kinds of ideas. They used remote-controlled dummies and even launched them with catapults. But in both cases, the results looked way too fake. After a lot of trial and error, they finally came up with a creative solution: front projection. With this technique, Christopher Reeve was placed on a support rig in front of a super reflective screen. Then, a special mirror was positioned at a 45-degree angle in front of a projector. The mirrored side projected an image onto the reflective screen, while the camera filmed through the transparent side of the mirror, making it look like Superman was flying through the scene. They also used wires for some flight scenes. In one of them, Reeve was lifted by a crane about 60 meters in the air, held up by just 2 cables. And since there was no CGI, those wires had to be manually erased frame by frame during post-production. As for the famous blue screen, it was only used when Superman needed to perform more complicated flying moves. The movie also helped shape key parts of Superman's mythology that became canon from then on, and one of the biggest contributions actually came from Marlon Brando himself. He suggested that the S on Superman's chest shouldn't just be a letter, but a Kryptonian symbol representing his family. Another major idea that became iconic is the look of the Fortress of Solitude. In the comics before the movie, Fortress was either a cave in the mountains or a hidden spot carved into an Arctic cliff, and Superman had to use a giant key to open it. But in the movie, they reimagined it as a structure formed from high-tech Kryptonian crystals that stored all the knowledge of his home planet. That's how Superman is able to interact with a hologram of his father, Jor-El.
I'm Jor-El. I'm your father.
The movie also brought a deeper emotional layer to Superman. Despite all his powers, there are still moments when he's helpless, like when his adoptive father dies of a heart attack. It's a turning point in the movie, and it highlights the human side of the hero, something that would become a recurring theme in future Superman stories. But what truly defined Christopher Reeve's version of the character was the way he played both Clark Kent and Superman. As Clark, he was awkward and shy. As Superman, he was confident and commanding. That contrast became the blueprint for how the character should be portrayed. And let's be honest, not every actor has pulled it off. Some just end up looking like Superman in glasses.
I know you.
I don't think so.
People ever tell you look like Superman?
In addition to defining how Superman should be portrayed and establishing key elements of the hero's mythology, the movie also introduced the most iconic superhero movie theme in cinema history. Originally, director Richard Donner reached out to Jerry Goldsmith, with whom he had worked on The Omen. However, due to scheduling conflicts, Goldsmith couldn't take the job, which opened the door for John Williams. At the time, Williams had already composed the memorable scores for Jaws and Star Wars. The soundtrack earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score, along with Best Editing and Best Sound. Although it didn't win in these categories, it did receive a Special Achievement Award for its groundbreaking visual effects. After all, making someone fly on screen in the 70s was no easy task. The movie had a budget of $55 million, which was considered pretty high for the time, but thanks to a great response from the audience, Superman ended up making over $300 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing film of that year, just behind Grease. Because Superman and Superman 2 were filmed back-to-back, the sequel was already guaranteed and released in 1980, introducing General Zod as the main villain.
Oh God, Zod.
But after Superman 2, things started going downhill. Superman 3 took a more comedic route and even brought in comedian Richard Pryor, a move that didn't sit well with fans or critics. Still, the franchise managed to push out one last movie, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, which marked Christopher Reeve's final appearance as Superman.
I just wish you could all see the Earth the way that I see it.
Let me know in the comments who is your favorite Superman, and don't forget to check out these other recommendations on the side.